YouTube, it's Lauren.
It's Michael.
This is our first ever YouTube review.
YouTube is up and running. We're trying to get our first video on there, make something of ourselves, you know. It's looking pretty cool so far, you know. The first video on there was a dude at the zoo, so I mean, anything is possible, right?
Anything is possible. But we're gonna add some context though. We love independent films.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about indie films, loving that culture, that vibe. It's amazing. And my favorite director, and yours too, of independent, is Richard Linklater, right?
Yeah, Linklater.
And the best film?
Slacker.
Dazed and Confused.
Slacker.
Okay.
It's Slacker, guys.
It's
obviously.
Dazed and Confused. Matthew McConaughey.
Slacker came
all right.
first. Well, you know, Madonna's pap smear is a little bit more important than Matthew McConaughey.
Gonna
and
have
we
to-
added that mustache was like not the business, so.
But the Ted Nugent though, the shirt, it's iconic.
Maybe the Ted Nugent, but you know, it's still Slacker all the way.
Okay, well, we are gonna discuss this in detail right now. Okay, so we're obviously a little torn here, but let's take it from Roger Ebert. He's a pretty good film critic, you know. Now, he actually gave Dazed and Confused 3 stars.
Oh, that's funny because he gave Slacker 3 stars as well.
You're gonna have to lay it down for me why you think Slacker is better, because my heart still goes out more for Dazed and Confused.
Well, I can tell you Mr. Roger himself said that Slacker was refreshing and soothing, and it was also actually pretty funny. So I mean, take it from him. Let's go for a walk, you know. I'll give you some facts to let you know why Slacker is #1.
Okay, Michael, here is your chance to tell me what you really feel.
Let's start with how dedicated Linklater was to this film. Initially, he didn't even have enough money to fund the film. He maxed out his credit cards, he borrowed money from his parents. There was even a time where he didn't even have enough money to pay for prints for the film. But you know what? He didn't let that discourage him. He worked his best, and even though it was rejected from a lot of film festivals, he was able to get it picked up by Sundance after it was shown at the Dolby Theater in Austin, and it actually like sold out 22 showings. So I mean, for an independent film, 22 showings sold out, that's kind of big. From there, it released in theaters in July of 1991. Even though the narrative in the story doesn't really focus too much on the characters, you know, you still get that feel of relatability to them. The film is Slacker. Of course, it's gonna be about a bunch of Austin slackers who haven't done anything with their lives. I mean, who says that isn't relatable? So, you know, the cast, even though they were a bunch of no-names, they were selected by Linklater, invite only, to a casting call. So, I mean, they were pretty special. They made the film when it was.
Okay, so let me know some other thoughts here on Slacker.
Going back to the topic of commitment, I would say that Linklater was really proud of this film. You know, it was his first independent film. He worked really hard on it, took all the money he could to get funds for the film, which I mean worked out in the end for him. And you know, he was actually so committed, he was actually in the film. In the very first sequence, the guy on the bus, and then from the airport, got in the cab, went on this like big spiel about dreams and how we're in an alternate universe, and when you make one decision, it turns into another alternate dimension, and it was just crazy. That was Linklater, and it was kind of cool to find that out.
Yeah, and it sounds very existential.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, very quarter-life crisis here for all the
Right.
characters. Relatable. All right. Let me tell you why Dazed and Confused is the better Linklater film. Roger Ebert said that Dazed and Confused is a more finessed version of Slacker. They both have that kind of following one character, veering to another, and then coming together to tell the whole story. Okay. But I do have to say that it's more finessed in Dazed and Confused. It's very jumpy and Slacker. You know, it kind of just veers around. There's a lot of different cameras going on. It's more amateur looking, if you'll take that as a...
Well, you know what? Slacker is still mentioned, and I mean, come on now. Dazed and Confused is basically Slacker, just more of like a Hollywood film, if you get my drift.
It was. I mean, the budget was bigger, you know. The budget was about $7 million almost, maybe a little bit under. And then they did make a profit of another $1 million, much like Slacker as well. It was a box office flop, and then later it came to be celebrated as a very youth cult film. The day is May 28th, 1976. It's the last day of high school. Now, Roger Ebert has described Dazed and Confused as kind of like an inverted John Hughes movie. The problems are a lot less dramatic. It's very much more slow and much more realistic, I would say.
Right.
I mean, the biggest struggle that the kids have in Dazed and Confused is the fact that Kevin's party got busted and the need to find Aerosmith tickets. But really, it's very Woodstock era. Everybody just goes cruising together. Community aspects, I would say, is a large integral part of it. And yes, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's all.
It's the way of life.
It's the way of life. You know, actually, a good majority of Linklater's budget for the film went to the songs and getting the copyrights for the songs, those allowances, because there were 30. And that album, the soundtrack of the movie, did go double platinum. So there is one thing we can come to an agreement on that's absolutely necessary.
A kick-ass montage.